Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry, there's some reverberation. Just one sec. Is this okay? Yep. I think we're fine now. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Bylaws Review Subcommittee for Wednesday, April 2nd. Please stand if you're able for the acknowledgement of traditional lands. We acknowledge we're hosted on the lands of the Mississaugas of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Wendat. We also recognize the enduring presence of all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Thank you very much. I'd like to begin with an approval of the agenda. May I please have a mover and a seconder?
Trustee Williams.
Thank you, Trustee Williams, seconded by Trustee McLean. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Are there any declarations now that we know what's on the agenda for possible conflict of interest? Hearing and seeing none, we'll move on. Are there any delegations? You mean nobody wants to line up and talk to us about bylaws? Anyway, thank you. Now we'll move on to staff reports. Just for our colleagues, we have Trustee McLean in the room with me. And we have, of course, Ms. Joseph Dowers, the director is here, Vitaly is here, and Leola is here, being a bit informal. We have Menchu also supporting us, and thank you, Sham. I always forget Sham's name, so I apologize for that. And online we have Trustees King and Williams, who are committee members, and we also have Trustee Hastings. Thank you so much. So staff reports 5.1, PO 39, the attendance and participation in the meetings. We have gone over this now a couple of times. It's actually here to be approved, and I'll go to staff, please, for a presentation. Thank you.
Thank you and good afternoon, everyone. Based on the conversations that we've had over the last bylaw review subcommittee meetings, we've landed on a complaint procedure. And if you recall that the direction from the committee was to prepare a report for the governance and policy committee. What we wanted to do is to tie up some loose ends with the related policies and procedures. So in this particular case, we'll start with P39, attendance and participation in meetings policies. Really not a significant amount of changes here. We've added some definitions, for example, of disability, family responsibilities, health-related and weather conditions. Those relate to the different categories that a trustee can make a request to excuse themselves and join online instead. And that is the major change to that. So really housekeeping plus changes to this particular policy. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. I'm looking to my colleagues. In the meantime, I'll pass it to Trustee McLean. I do have a question.
Yeah, please proceed.
Thank you very much, through you, Mr. Chair, to staff. I'm not concerned about notice as early as possible. That doesn't concern me. I think that's appropriate because one can plan ahead. But sorry, 6.3.1. 6.3.2 says if a member of the board making the request is required to submit the request and reasons, all of that makes sense. But my question is, as early as possible. So I'm wondering, do we need to separate if known in advance? Like a week's notice if known in advance, just so we can plan for quorum or other things that might be planned for. And then this as early as possible. Does it need some caveats about what would then be accepted after the fact? Hypothetically, I'm in the subway, on the subway, and I don't have service. And I try to call or write, and I can't. I get out of the subway and the meeting would have, already started, and I'm late to half an hour. I'm making all this up. what would the instructions be to me from a procedural point of view when it would have to be in writing? So would I have to take a screenshot that I attempted to call? I'm just wondering if as early as possible needs an asterisk to say something like details will be in the procedure. The other thing is, what if the chair doesn't answer their phone? So I just think in order to protect everyone, there might need to be, some real instructions provided and procedures. So there's clarity from a chair's responsibility perspective. Because, for example, if the chair's in a meeting, say he's meeting with the director and the mayor, making this up, he doesn't want to have his phone open. He wants to look like he's concentrating in the meeting, which means he couldn't see it, wouldn't necessarily get it, or the chair was otherwise indisposed. So I guess what I'm asking for is what would be the kind of, this is what you would do first, this is what you do second, this is what you would do third. So through you, Mr. Chair, to staff, again, I think there should be some distinction if known in advance versus last minute. And the last minute might need a little more flexibility. And I'm wondering if staff might want to include some sort of caveat here, because I noticed this in the fundraising document. It said this will be explained in procedures or something like that. So through you, Mr. Chair, to staff. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We approach the changes through the chair. We approach the changes to provide as much flexibility as possible for both the trustee who's making the request, but also for the chair or the vice chair who is receiving the request. And you'll see we kept the phrase as early as possible because in some cases, the earliest is 1 hour before the meeting. In some cases, it's 3 months before the meeting. You'll see in 6.3.7, we are asking members of the board to submit their written request to attend electronically well in advance so that the chair has enough time to consider the request. We will be working with the chair's office to implement some measures to make sure that the email box, let's say, is monitored on a regular basis. What we can do perhaps is be a lot more explicit on the email address or if necessary, the text, but at some point in time, the text exchange should be captured because the regulation requires the approval in writing. So those are some of the things that we can do just to maybe tease it out a little bit more possible. We are concerned though, just given the potential consequences of missing a meeting, did not want to put firm like 1 hour before the meeting, those type of issues. So ideally, hopefully, if someone isn't stuck in the subway and is running late, you are not missing a meeting. You're simply being late for a meeting. So hopefully that, but if there's a complete shutdown, I would imagine certainly the enforcement of the rules here under the regulation would consider some common sense into that.
I see the director. Oh, sir. Oh.
Good.
Mike.
All right, thank you. I just had to wait for the microphone to be turned on. And thank you, and through you, Chair. I think this is one that with the conversation now, we may, as Associate Director Pond said, want to take back to fine tune some more. As I'm listening, I'm thinking about perhaps 3 scenarios. What may be reasonable in advance, a reasonable expectation for when a trustee should be informing the chair about an expected absence that is known in advance, that would allow the chair and the board to be able to make appropriate accommodations, for example, for quorum, to be able to plan accordingly. And I think that that's one scenario. Reasonable expectation may be up to a couple of days before to allow changes of plans or rescheduling if need be, or anything of that sort. And then there is dealing with an emergency that may come up in a short term kind of way. And then to your point, Trustee Laskin, there is the thing that happens in the moment that may need to be dealt with after the fact. And then there is the sort of procedural aspect around the how. How is notification provided? How is a confirmation or response dealt with? And then we can clarify what needs to be stated explicitly in the bylaw and what may need to be dealt with through some other procedural tool. So I think that they're good conversation, and I've been thinking as well about the as early as possible. And I think we may want to consider providing a little bit more structure around the reasonableness of advance notice, and then deal with outside of those situations, what does reasonableness look like procedurally that would give folks assurance that that process will be followed, that a response will be fair, and that we're taking care of our responsibilities on all fronts. So I think a good scenario for us to kind of take back and look at each of those dimensions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I can just have a follow-up. Because what I'm anticipating, why I'm asking these questions, is I'm anticipating when this is on the floor of the GPC, the questions that colleagues that wouldn't be part of any of these discussions would have. Like, to the director's point, what does reasonableness mean? What does this mean? What does that mean? So I would actually support one more relook at just that particular clause. And through you, Mr. Chair, those were my only comments. It was really just about that sticking point. Thank you very much.
Through the chair, I think it would be very helpful for me to get some clear thoughts on when you talk about a little more fulsome discussion on what reasonableness is, because our last discussion, we talked about maybe not tying our hands in case of the need for flexibility. I just want to understand for myself whether the thinking is that we would import some sort of time measurement. So 2 days in advance, 1 week in advance. I just want to make sure that when we do come back with a revised draft, that it meets the expectations of the subcommittee. Thanks.
I'll take the chair back, Mr. McLean, and I'm looking for comments from my other colleagues. Trustee McLean, please go ahead.
Thank you, and through the chair. And then to the last point, I mean, I think that something about, 2 hours or something beforehand, or 3 hours, or, a time frame on the day of the procedure, but that might in procedures create some avenues, that you could provide written notice after the fact, conceivably, depending on where you are in certain situations, or make attempts. But you might actually fill the form out, or because you're driving, or there's all kinds of little last minute scenarios that could come up. So I do think that flexibility is important. And again, through you, Chair, does this, I guess I'm still trying to start when this applies. Like, this applies at formal board meetings, at P&P. Does this apply at private session of the board for the full board?
Through the chair, it applies to regular board meetings and committee of the whole meetings. So private session of the board.
Okay, because this is going to be really problematic this isn't going to be problematic for me, but this is when we have we begin private session of the board at 4:30 on Wednesdays. There isn't 22 of us in the room or online. That changes throughout the day. There are business commitments that colleagues have. Some will join late, some will join at 7. This is going to be really problematic for some of our colleagues. They work in different parts of the city. This is going to present a real challenge that I'm not even sure is a fair challenge because it wasn't when they decided to run for office and try to determine whether they could balance all these balls in the air and could they realistically do this? They figured that there would be some time and some efforts and they wouldn't have to, their workday wouldn't have to end on these specific days early enough to allow them to then, transit and be here for that. But then I'll pivot through you, Madam Chair, to special board. This wouldn't apply to special board meetings. Okay, so that's fine. Thank you.
Just stop there for a second. Through you, to staff, I believe when you answered my question, you did mention that it was if you were absent for an entire meeting. You could hypothetically work is an excuse why you can't be there at the start of the meeting. Could you not write to the chair and say my work prohibits me from arriving before 6 p.m. I will be there at 6 p.m. That, to your point, would need to be clarified legally.
Through the chair. So all these rules apply to in-person attendance, and your ability to join the meeting still be counted as attending the meeting electronically. So it could be a case where someone just simply cannot attend a meeting, will be marked absent, right? So we just need to make sure that we understand that. And I just want to make sure we're clear that there's a distinction on that. And we will be talking about bylaw reviews later on as the third agenda item. It does have an impact for sure on those when we start the private session at 4:30.
Right, but
I won't, please go ahead. I'll put myself back on the list.
okay. We've had some private sessions of the board that it's not just about being late. We've had some pretty short private sessions, like we've gotten there, and they've been very brief.
Like
So,
4:30 to 5.
Like they've been 25 minutes in duration. So the whole coming late means you missed it. So I do think that we need to a certain degree, to factor that in, or at least, deal with what that means and make sure that colleagues are clear that if there's something that previously their ongoing experience in their 6-8 years of being on the board they haven't had to do that they're required to do now, so that they don't find themselves in no man's land in violation of the. But I guess, so my last question through you, Madam Chair, pertains to who determines and who's at discretion that if you violate the new act, you've missed one, you didn't get permission. Is that the chair's responsibility now or is it the Minister of Education's responsibility? Who sits with the ball now in determining that, this didn't happen the way we'd like it to happen? And so I'd like to just understand.
Through the chair, just in reading the regulation, there's it's a requirement of the regulation, so the chair would not have discretion to determine whether someone has not complied with the requirements. So it would not be the chair. It just simply is a regulation.
And 6.5.9 says board services will record the attendance. So I would assume it would be a report from the director to the minister. I think for clarity, you asked a great question, and that would have to be part of the procedures, I would imagine.
So if there was, through you, Madam Chair, if there was to be then a penalty for, or.
You're gone.
Right, but is that the only, is that the only tool at the minister's disposal? And are they required to use it? Is it discretionary between the minister? Or is it the position that this is simply notification? The board is notifying Trustee McLean missed said meeting, didn't comply with the permission requirement, and subsequently missed said meeting. Ergo, we've asked him for his stuff and are looking to fill his vacancy. Like, or does somebody have an opportunity to interview? Like, I'm just curious how the dominoes fall and who's responsible for what and what the expectation is.
Through the chair, I think those are excellent questions, and questions I would also probably have. We are awaiting information from the ministry on a variety of issues on how to implement the changes to of course, the board member code of conduct with the appeal procedure, but also this aspect of it. What we attempted to do is to simply update our procedures to reflect the regulation, how the details of its implementation. I think there will certainly be a need for a discussion on how best to do so. Hopefully, we'll get additional guidance from the ministry on their expectations, and also if there's a route for a trustee who's affected by it to challenge it. I'm hoping to. We're actually have not received any information to date.
Okay. I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just to add that my understanding is OPSPA is also working on guidance for boards on this particular issue. Trustee King, please go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I came in with similar questions around 6.3.1, providing the notice in advance in writing. So I'm happy that we're fleshing through that a little bit more. For me, it was less about the in advance part and more about the in writing, because that will also carry into other clauses like 6.3.6. Where a consideration is not considered approved unless it's in writing or received before. So just trust that staff will have their attention to all the related clauses as they look at that item. I also wanted to just raise a point around 6.3.3, which talks about a consideration due to weather and when it is not safe to travel, that would be a reasonable consideration to seek electronic participation. I feel that safely or timely might be a worthwhile addition. I think about folks that maybe, for instance, in my case, traveling from southern end of the city, it might be safe to travel, but by TTC, but due to weather conditions and what's going on with service, it might be that that's going to be a 3-hour trip. And maybe the timing doesn't allow at that stage, or that just might be a decision that I make. I think for our winter months, I think that's a reasonable consideration to add. And I'll pause there maybe just to see if staff have any comment before I move on to my last one.
Staff, were these discretionary or are these right in the legislation
Through the chair, these are word for word from the from the regulation.
or from the
Yeah,
regulation?
so unfortunately, we cannot add timely.
So just to clarify, Trustee King, this clause is exactly from the regulation. So these were the instructions. Staff didn't write these.
Through the chair, understood. Do we have the flexibility to capture the sentiment otherwise, even if it's not specifically in that clause?
Through the chair, so there's also a distinction between being late for a meeting and then not being able to get permission in advance to join electronically until you can attend in person, versus actually missing the entire meeting in person and being able to join electronically. We tried to look through the regulation multiple times to see if there's a little more flexibility in this. Unfortunately, we are required to put down this rationale or these reasons, and there's nothing else in the regulation that indicate more of a catch-all circumstance where someone might be late.
Thank you, through the chair. So just to follow up, I think this is distinct in the scenario that I'm suggesting, because it wouldn't be a matter of being late. It would be a matter of making a choice to seek permission to attend electronically and not even make the attempt in person based on circumstances due to
Weather.
weather and the length of time it would take for the commute.
Through the chair, I sincerely am empathetic to that. Unfortunately, the regulation does not have a category that would allow for that.
Okay.
As chair, though, let me just probe one more time. Assuming that the weather is bad and the timing, it wouldn't just be you, Trustee King, that would be affected. It would be multiple staff, multiple, support. Is there, what if the director decides or somebody who can decide that the meeting is going virtual? Because we have had those circumstances where it is said, do not come in person. We've been told not to come in person. The meeting will be virtual. Is there that piece in the regulation?
For you, Madam Chair, based on my recollection of the regulation, there is no possibility to switch to fully virtual meeting. It means that meeting would have to be canceled and rescheduled to another time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, Trustee King. Please go ahead for further questions.
Through you, Chair, you must have read my mind because my next question is on 6.4, which deals with closures of schools due to weather conditions. And this had me reflect on the situation that we were in February, when in fact all of our school buildings were closed by the director's direction. And thus we were told not to participate in person. Would that scenario fall under this clause?
Through the chair, so in such a situation, the weather provisions could apply. So still you need to have written permission, although I would imagine a proactive approach can be the same as consent. In the situation that occurred, we still had the minimum under the Education Act for a meeting to proceed. So at least one, the chair and at least one other trustee plus one staff, the director or designate. So at least we met the minimum requirements of the act. But in this case, we will have to communicate that type of situation proactively.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Just to wrap up that comment, just trying to think from a practical standpoint of anything that saves a bit of work. I'm thinking, how do we avoid having 21 trustees have to, write in electronically to seek that permission? So just trying to think through some of those scenarios. And then I think my final comment was with respect to the communication. My colleague shared some concerns about in a last minute scenario, the chair might not have the attention to be able to receive a notification. I'm wondering if the chair's office is a more appropriate contact than the chair themselves. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, staff. Would you like to respond to that or just accept that?
We accept that.
Thank you very much. Trustee Williams, did you have any comments?
Thank you, through the chair. I think my colleagues have covered everything that caught my attention as well. I'm not sure if I'm misreading this 6.2.2. Near the end, about the chair, vice chair, or other member as applicable before the meetings. There's no opportunity in this for the chair and vice chair to delegate their responsibility. That's my understanding.
Thank you, Mr. Plotnikoff.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I believe the language is from the regulation, word by word. And the reference to other member, I believe it applies to school boards which do not have vice chair position. So in that case, it would be chair or other member of the board. So we included that just to kind of make sure that it's consistent with the regulation, and just in case I don't see that coming, but theoretically, our school board could have just the chair. Thank you.
Then perhaps just asking you might consider a footnote on other member, or put it in brackets with a footnote, just to clarify that, because I'm sure other colleagues would have the same question as Trustee Williams. Anything else, Trustee Williams?
Thank you, through the chair. You know, that was the only outstanding thing that I had.
Thank you. I just want to probe a little bit because Associate Director Pon asked, would you want more specifics in terms of timing as opposed to the reasonableness or the as soon as possible? Similar to what the director mentioned, maybe there are 3 different levels. Do you have any thoughts on that? 1 hour, 6 hours, 2 weeks?
I appreciate the way it's written now with that flexibility, but I'm not opposed to having other opportunities there for examples of what that reasonable notice would be, what that timely notice would be. Yeah, I like the flexibility, but not opposed to having some of those more specific examples.
Thank you very much. Trustee McLean.
Thank you. And through the chair, I just have a really simple question. Do we think envision in the practical operations and the logistics of this, do we envision a possibility where the chair, we've got bad weather, the chair could grant, you know, to the entire board permission, you know, not to come in? Someone would have to be present. The director would have to designate someone. They'd have to be in the room. But, you know, to make a blanket so that we wouldn't have to theoretically cancel the business of the board. And you know,
Postponing.
rescheduling board meetings is not the easiest thing to do. And, you know, flipping to online would be there are a lot of scenarios that would be preferable. So do we envision, you know, the latitude for the chair to, you know, to make a blanket declaration so that we could technically have our meeting and not have to cancel the business of the board?
Through the chair, just based on earlier questions, and I don't recall which trustee, I am looking at making some changes to the procedure that would have a pre-approval, a proactive approval if under those circumstances. So I think it makes sense. Thank you.
Anything further, Trustee McLean? Mr. Director?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. And just to put a point on my earlier comments, I think there is the law and there is the spirit of the law and the intentions, right, of the law. And we want to be practical. We want to be reasonable, and I understand there are always parameters around what reasonableness, you know, might look like in different scenarios. And at the same time, I think that in order to make sure that we can operate within a structure that's known, understood, agreed upon, and that there is a discipline around the way that we operate, I think there is also, you know, a need to balance the flexibility with, you know, with structure, and again, something that's known and understood in advance. And I think we don't want to create unintended consequences by the way that we frame, you know, the expectations laid out in the bylaw. But I think we do want to set, you know, some high expectations, but reasonable for the way that a board is intended to operate. And you know, based on what the public would expect, and so forth. So I think that's a really good conversation to take back and kind of flesh out what that might look like, to provide the flexibility that is necessary to prevent unintended consequences, and at the same time to make sure that there is an appropriate structure and appropriate guidance that's provided, that reflects you know, due diligence, that reflects you know, expectations of the public, and that respects the spirit of what the regulation was intended to convey, and fully recognizing that everything isn't laid out in a way that answers every questions. And so that's I think what we're aiming to do, and what you're aiming to do through the bylaws is address some of those gaps. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Well,
Mr. McLean, did you?
yeah, I certainly appreciate the director's comments about the spirit and about reasonableness, but that's and I think I understand it. But at the same time, I think there are reasonable expectations about the funding of education that I can't sell at the legislature. So there's like, it's a tricky, it's a slippery slope, that's all.
Point,
Um,
touche.
Latouche.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Through the
Thank
chair, if
you.
I could just add, I think what I'm hearing, based on the discussion so far, we have to be careful about making a requirement like a week before the meeting. However, we can be careful about putting in either expectations or guidelines or something a little lower than that. So I think what I'm hearing is our expectations is that if you have a pre-planned event that requires you to not be able to attend in person, that you submit it by X days, X weeks in advance. So certainly we can create that. What I am hesitant to do is to create a requirement that is actually not required in law. But I think having those examples with setting the expectations so that we have good practice, and over time people will become a lot more familiar with it, and a lot easier to comply with. That's something that we can certainly come back with. And we have a little bit of time to come back with, to set, to make that a lot more explicit in the procedure.
Thank you. May I pass the chair?
Yeah, please proceed.
Thank you. So I think to the point that this is now, you know, partway through the term, actually in the last year of this particular term, because it comes into play in September of 2025 and the term is up in November of 2026. I understand in many ways that is unreasonable. And I know that's been an argument from OPSPA saying a critical change like this should be known to trustees before they even put their names forward. The fact that the requirement, the in-person requirement, especially for those, and you want to encourage trustees from all walks of life to run for political office, not just a certain niche who has, you know, any time during the day to just come in person to a meeting. So I know that OPSPA was fighting against the unreasonableness of requiring this in the middle of a term.
Yes.
That being said, I do think there could be some conversation, and I'm not sure what the appropriate way to do that is, because we're coming up pretty close to the time where we have to think about the schedule of meetings for the 25-26 final year of the board. And I do think that if there are trustees who literally cannot, because of their day requirements, and because there's 6 or 8 board meetings during the year, can't take 6 or 8 vacation days to leave work in order to fulfill this requirement as well, because their livelihood depends on it. I don't know how there's a conversation about what could be the earliest time you could come. Maybe we have to think about being the city. Now they run their meetings over multiple days. Maybe we have Wednesdays and Thursdays, or Tuesday and Wednesday meetings that start at 6. I don't know what the right answer is, but I do know that you know, there's still a year in this term of folks that actually ran still during the COVID period, so that the expectation was most meetings you could come virtually. So there wasn't, I think, in people's mind, the idea, for better or for worse, that this was an in-person requirement. So I think that's maybe that's a conversation. And when we land on where we land in just you know, this policy, I think they're probably in a presentation to GPC, when it's going to be presented in your deck or however you're going to be presenting, some different scenarios or some different things proposed, maybe some hypothetical cases, just to help guide, especially when we want to provide maximum flexibility and provide reasonableness. I do think there might be, to my colleague's point, people's definitions of reasonableness can be very different. So, but I think this has been a really positive discussion, and I really appreciate the work of staff and the comments that people made. Are there any further comments? Yes, Trustee McLean, please.
Just that it's just food for thought kind of thing going forward, we may consider, or we may wish to consider, that our private sessions of the board not be fixed, and that they would be, they wouldn't be automatic, and that we could call them when needed, and then they would be special meetings of the board, and therefore outside the window. Like it might be, because it might be the easiest path to get protecting everybody, and it was just kind of leave that up just for people to think about.
Through the chair, you said the silent part out loud. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'd be looking for a motion then. Sorry, it's been. No, I think we're going to refer it back to staff. So that the matter be referred back to staff for further revisions based upon the comments of the subcommittee.
Happy to move, Madam Chair.
Thank
I'll
you.
second.
Thank you, Trustee King. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much. So now we're into 5.2, which is here, even though we finalized it the last time, I think it was for one more look. Is that true, staff, in order to move it forward?
Through the chair, it is for one more look. We did take into account additional comments that were made at the last meeting. We talked about having different ways in which a complaint can be filed. So we added the street address to it, and some rules if someone were to send it by regular mail, when when we're going to deem receipt of it. And I think, I don't know, Mr. Plotnikoff, I don't know if there's additional things I might be missing here.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. We included definitions that we discussed in respect to the conversation about complaint protocol. You remember we talked about complaint protocol, and since the code of conduct is the governing policy and closely connected, so we decided to make sure that the same set of definitions is included in both documents. And then, as Associate Director mentioned, we made sure to respond to committee's comments and incorporate all pieces that are applicable to the code of conduct as part of the conversation on the complaint protocol. So at this point, we hope that both documents, the code of conduct and the complaint protocol, are closely aligned. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Trustee King.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I only have one question to staff on 6.15.1. So based on the conversation in our last meeting, and as we just heard from staff, I know that the addition of registered mail was added. I'm curious about a scenario in which a member of the public might choose to submit a complaint through regular mail that is then not actually received by the board.
Through
And
the
I'll then follow up thinking, again, if that person has a complaint, if there then there's a mistrust on whether or not the complaint was actually received or not, and how can we consider that?
Through the chair, I think it's a really good question, which is why we did not want regular mail to begin with. It's not, it's generally quite reliable, but there could be some issues with respect to that. We added that as a option because registered mail, there is a cost to it as well. So we also didn't want cost to be a barrier. We do believe email is probably the most efficient way to do. So there's lots of options here. I would be more than happy to remove regular mail. I think that will avoid a lot of problems if at all possible. I don't know if we still have a fax machine in the office.
Thank you, through your chair. I think that would be a good consideration. The only other alternative I can think of is just some kind of footnote. Obviously that things can happen with regular mail and the delivery is not guaranteed. Just if any of my colleagues have any just further thought about keeping that in as an equitable option. And that's it for me on this one.
Thank you very much. If I can pass the chair, Trustee McLean.
Please proceed.
Maybe if it's, if you choose to deliver by regular mail, please call this number to say that you have mailed the correspondence or your plan is to send it by regular mail so they can watch for it. That would be the only safeguard that I could think of, is if we wanted to keep regular mail in, it would have to be a phone call advising that one was sending something by regular mail. I just say that for the consideration. If we wanted to keep regular mail in, I have no issue taking regular mail out, but to the point that registered mail has a cost to it, and to ensure that somebody who was planning to send it by regular mail actually did send it on that particular day, that could be tracked. Through you, Mr. Chair, wondering what staff might think of that.
Through the chair, I think that's a good option as well.
Can I go back to Trustee King, Mr. Chair, just to see what she thinks about that option? Because she
Trustee King?
Yeah, I think either of those would be fine, just as long as we have a way to address it. I'm fine with either.
Okay, thank you. And with that, I'll return the chair.
Thank you. Did anyone have any further comments on here? Seeing none, with that small change, a motion please to approve.
I'll move to approve.
Thank you very much, Trustee McLean. A seconder?
Trustee Williams.
Thank you very much, Trustee Williams. All in favor? Thank you very much.
Aye.
This was a lot of work, and sincerely appreciate staff's time. And just for staff's awareness, I did ensure our colleagues knew, those that weren't on the subcommittee, that these were being discussed today. And I included links, sent it out first thing. And just so people know, I didn't receive any comments from anyone else. That's not saying, as a warning, when it comes on the GPC agenda, there will be people saying they had no idea that this would be coming. So I just say that in advance. I'll do my best to make sure that people know. And I know that the chair of the GPC committee will do her best to make sure people know when these are coming, and if they have issues, to make sure they're being raised. This is a small committee, it's meeting in the day, but that's not to imply that we don't want to hear from everyone. So I just wanted to make that. 5.3, the board bylaws, a status update. I really liked how these were positioned. I'll go to you, Associate Director.
Okay. Thank you. We are embarking on a pretty significant review of the bylaws. At the last meeting, or the prior meeting, sorry, we just provided a teaser of what we plan to talk about, some of the issues that we plan to talk about. We are also planning a survey, as discussed last time, of all trustees. A draft has been prepared and we are just putting the final touches on it. We do plan to send out the survey relatively soon, and that survey will ask a few guiding questions on certain parts of the bylaw by section, and will provide trustees with an opportunity to also identify any other issues they wish by section, and of course, overall with our bylaws. This is really a good attempt to try to solicit feedback from all the trustees so that the work of the bylaw review subcommittee can move forward using information and making informed decisions. So I will be asking Policy Officer Plotnikov to be leading most of this work on the bylaw section. We have identified a few there that we would like to focus on. Of course, after we receive the survey information plus additional items that have come up, we will also continue to work on those. So I will hand it over to Mr. Plotnikov to just talk about the next steps. Thank you.
Thank you, Associate Director. So based on, and through you, Madam Chair, based on the discussion that we had last time, we positioned the issues that are being proposed for consideration by this committee in the order of current bylaws, section by section. So as you can see on page 77 of your agenda, at this point, we have seven items. Election of chair, vice chair, then discussion about planning and priorities committee and the committee of the whole, celebrations as item on the agenda, speaking time for both trustees and staff and members of the public, including committees of the whole committee, community advisory committee members. Item number 5, motion to receive, extending meeting time, it's number 6, and delegations. And as Associate Director mentioned, during the, hopefully during the feedback that we will receive to the survey, the list will be expanded. We will add notes and additional items that will be incorporated in this timeline. In terms of timeline, by the way, we're still hoping to complete everything by the date of expiry of this committee's mandate, meaning by the end of June, and submit revised draft bylaws as advance notice to the Board of Trustees for consideration. And I guess if that timeline is not possible, perhaps the chair with the members would consider extension of the mandate of this committee. With that, back to you, Associate Director. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I guess we'll see how it goes. We're still just at the beginning of April. I know it's an awful lot of work, having been part of this process before. But I think some of the changes, even though there may be differences, I think on the changes themselves, I think there's a lot of consensus that some changes have to be made. So I'm looking forward to these discussions. So my question is, are we starting today, number 1 to 4? And how are you going to lead us through that? Thank you.
Through the chair, Policy Officer Plotnikov has prepared a deck to provide some information based on a jurisdictional scan of some topics, really flowing from a request that was made at a prior meeting. I think this will be very helpful to at least get a good first step in our conversation. And so if you can add that deck and show the deck, possible.
And have the trustees, it's in our blue folders here, so it was sent to the committee members would have this? Thank you very much for confirming. Trustee King, I saw your head go up and down and peeking, so thank
Okay.
you.
Excellent. So over to you again.
Thank you, Associate Director, and through you, Madam Chair. It's a very brief.
Can you speak closer a little?
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. It's a brief PowerPoint presentation on the scan that we conducted in preparation for discussion of the first 4 items listed in the report. And essentially, we looked at posted documents, bylaws of several school boards, and identified key pieces of information for your consideration. I just should note that this information is our staff interpretation of the posted documents, so we cannot guarantee full accuracy because we didn't have a chance to speak with members of those school boards. So this is our understanding what their documents state. So if we look at the second slide, thank you. This is election of chair, vice chair as and representatives to external organizations. So if you recall, the issue is whether the committee would recommend to include in the bylaws the default process for election. At this point, and you see that information at the bottom of this slide, TDSB vote first on process and then option to select of secret ballot or recorded vote is chosen. And if you look at other school boards that we scan, they all go with default as a secret ballot. We can move to the next one. Thank you. So then the next one is with regard to committee of the whole. TDSB defined committee of the whole as a meeting format. It's a format of Board of Trustees meeting. And this is important in connection to the electronic participation policy discussion we had and the role and how we treat the Planning and Priorities Committee, which includes all members of the board. So we looked at several school boards, and most of them, it appears, also treat Committee of the Whole as a format of the Board of Trustee meeting. It's Peel District School Board that defined their Committee of the Whole as a committee. Thank you. We can move to the next one. Celebrations and criteria around celebrations at board meetings. All school boards have that, except for we are not sure about Toronto Catholic as agenda item. It's a standard agenda item similar to TDSB's. But we did not find any specific rules, any criteria, any limitations on that item. Thank you. Speaking time for trustees at committee meetings, right? So we have unlimited 5-minute each speaking time rule for speaking at committee meetings. And if you look at other school boards, there is a bit of difference in approaches. And I guess that information could be helpful for our consideration. Thank you. Before we jump to the end, there is one last item. Speaking time for staff and CAC at board and committee meetings. We did not find any rules around that. So I think, except for Toronto Catholic District School Board, essentially one phrase, if asked by the chair, staff will have 5 minutes to speak to reports. Other than that, we don't have any kind of examples we could follow. And I guess in this sense, we will be on our own to determine our rules if we decide to do so. Thank you. Back to you, Associate Director.
Over to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Were there any questions on any of this information that's been presented? Trustee Williams.
Hi, thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. I just had a question on that, I believe it's the third slide, committee structure and composition. If staff, maybe elaborate a little bit more, because my understanding is that, if all of the trustees are participating, whether it's a committee or a format, the new regulation defines that as a committee of the whole. So I'm just looking for some clarification on that, and just also the clarification, like the distinction. It's sounding like semantics to me, to be honest, and just looking for, staff to maybe provide a bit more clarity and information on that.
Thank you very much for the question. I'll turn it over to staff.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'll just start. The regulation itself doesn't define it. My understanding, based on comments made by Trustee Arts in previous meetings, there seems to be an interpretation that any committee in which all trustees are members is considered a committee of the whole. That's not elaborated in the regulation, although it may be something that has been determined by case law. That is something that we can look into further. I am aware of not all school boards would have something like a planning priorities committee where all members are included. So one of the survey questions, actually it's multiple survey questions, we'll be talking about that very issue to solicit input from all the trustees. But in the meantime, we can certainly do a little more digging on whether the case law has in fact interpreted a committee of all members as being a committee of the whole. Thank you.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you for that, looking into that further. Through you, Madam Chair, that was my question.
Thank you very much. Okay then, so are we ready to tackle item number 1? And do you want to lead us through this, Mr. Plotnikoff?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. This is relatively simple. The current bylaws do not include, TDSB bylaws do not include a rule that would be a default rule for the election of chair, vice chair, and representatives to external organizations. And the recommendation is we probably need to, should include for efficiency purposes. So one approach would be defined as default approach, and it could be either secret ballot or recorded vote. And that would be part of the bylaws provision. So then implementation of that will be just voting to elect the representatives. And as you saw in the slide deck, all of the scanned school boards follow the same process. They have a default as secret ballot. Thank you.
Trustee McLean.
Can someone explain the merits, I guess, of the recorded vote? Because for me, I would much prefer it just said it was going to be a secret ballot, period. That's how we're going to do things. I don't understand the merit of it. I don't understand. I can't envision a scenario in which I think this would be a good idea. So if this has been used previously, why it was deemed to be a good choice or the rationale around it?
Through the chair, we totally agree. However, I do recall within the last 11 years, there was a debate at board about There is often debate about whether we want to have whether the Board of Trustees want to have a closed or open. So I'm not sure if necessarily all trustees are of the same opinion. However, this is why we are recommending that the closed ballot be the default. And if there is a desire to have an open ballot a vote, is the threshold 50% plus one? Is it a higher threshold? There's a number of things that we can do. But I think the chair.
If I can pass the chair, Trustee McLean,
Well, since I asked the question, you probably can't pass it to me, can you?
can I pass the chair to Trustee King?
Go ahead, Trustee Laskin.
Thank you very much. In the first two terms of this board, the default was public recorded vote. There was no secret ballot. And that was on purpose to keep trustees honest. Because when people were vying for positions and somebody said they supported you, they had to stand up in public and actually do that. There was a time when people said they were supporting you, and when the vote was being held, they did not. After that, the bylaws were changed and it went to a choice. But initially, it was recorded vote because the thought was you're duly elected and you want to stand for something, people have to have integrity around the table, whether they support you or not. It's really changed in the last number of terms. I know I have been one of the few people that have put my hand up for recorded vote because I still firmly believe that people play games with their votes. That's just my personal opinion. And those that are fighting for leadership positions, I believe, deserve the integrity of knowing who's supporting them or not supporting them. But in this particular case, because I have usually been the only one the last number of votes, I would acquiesce and think the default procedure should be secret ballot, and I would support that.
Okay,
Thank you, Madam Chair.
so do I have the floor again?
I will return the chair to Trustee Laskin.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair, through you. So I want to understand this recorded vote thing. We would do it in the manner that we do it now, and that we would vote privately and then post it?
No, there would be no recorded vote if it's a
No.
secret ballot.
Right, I get that. But if we're still going to leave the option, we're going to make we're going to make the secret ballot the default position, but there's still going to be a mechanism that if trustees wanted to, or are we taking that away?
Through the chair, two options. One, you can still have open ballot as an option to be selected, or we can simply say secret ballot is the only option that's available.
Just for clarity, if the recorded vote is still an option, what's the change?
Well, because now it's not, currently the first order of business is to decide which mechanism. What's being suggested is we have a clear path suggested. If we're going to go the recorded, maybe it's just the majority, maybe it's a 2/3, or maybe we eliminate it altogether. But if that's
Right.
what I think
Thank
the
you.
question is.
Mhm.
And my line of questioning, my position then becomes, if people go to the recorded vote, like, I'm very much against even the possibility of what the Catholic Board, like it said what the Catholic Board here is in secret, but not that long ago, this is new for them then. Because what they used to do was have a recorded vote, but they don't have a recorded vote in the manner that we did it. They would go around the horseshoe and one trustee would stand up and vote. And
That's
if
what
you-
it used to be like around here.
Right. And I vehemently, like, I can't possibly, the concept that you could sit in this chair, watch the votes, count the votes, and then figure out how this is going to end, and then vote accordingly is a whole different thing than suggesting we're going to vote secretly as we do now in a recorded vote. We vote secretly, and then we post how everyone voted. That's
No, not on a secret vote.
No,
Can I
but in
just
a
clarify?
recorded situation presently in our board, we vote the way we push the button independently. You only know how people voted if they verbally tell you, but if everybody pushed the toy the way it was designed to go, we would all vote, not know what the decision was, and then the results would be posted. And no one gets to the benefit of knowing how everybody else voted before they voted. Like that's how our system is supposed to work. That's why we get the toys. I appreciate that what happens for us is 2/3 of the people use the machine and 1/3 of the people verbally say McLean in favor, McLean opposed. But on a recorded vote, like I don't want to know if we're going to go down, if we're going to entertain this recorded vote possibility, I don't want the scenario in which anyone would know the outcome before they voted. They should get to vote independently, how they want. And then if we're going to say this is public knowledge after the fact, which is my interpretation of what we presently do in a recorded vote, then we post it.
So I'm not, sorry, I'm missing your question because the voting here is done electronically. So the situation that you talked about doesn't happen here and has never happened here. Because even in the past, when we didn't have the tools and gadgets, it was all in favor, all stood up. It wasn't a one by one. Those then they sat down and then those opposed stood up. So it wasn't a one by one count ever in this boardroom.
Right, but you still get, even in that scenario, you still get to do that.
But we're not doing that. So I don't know why you're
No.
mentioning it. That's not
Well,
what a recorded vote is here. It's you vote electronically and it pops up. That's a recorded vote here.
Okay, and that's fine. But there's been lots of votes that we've been recorded that members of the board and the public are aware of how certain trustees are voting.
That's recorded. A secret ballot is secret. How you vote is never released.
Through the chair, if I can just help, we're really focusing on the election of a chair and a vice chair, not on a vote on a agenda item. So my understanding with what we've done, I think almost for every single year that I've seen was secret ballot in paper. We've done a paper secret ballot. I'm not even
It's
aware
never
of.
recorded.
I'm
It's
not
just
sure.
the winner or the loser.
Okay, well then to make this simple, because this is 100% of what I believe in, I will move that we have no option and that the process for electing the chair and vice chair is by secret ballot.
Is there a seconder? I don't have a seconder for that. Trustee Williams.
Just trying to get a little bit more discussion on this to fully understand what the options are. So if we were to make the default secret ballot when we go for the election of the chair and vice chair, so that's what we go into the organizational meeting with. That's the default. So the other option that I heard suggested is that there be also a provision that if, for example, a simple majority of trustees, so it would be on a motion, I suppose, a trustee could move that that it be a recorded vote. And how we do our recorded votes is electronically. Or maybe there's going to be a suggestion of some other process, some other voting process, but some kind of electronic process. And the results are only known when everyone has cast their vote. So that in a way eliminates what I'm guessing, I'm hearing is like shutting down the opportunity of being influenced influenced in the moment by how others are casting their vote. So secret ballot alone or secret ballot with the possible option of moving to have a recorded vote. So the suggestions that I've heard, the comments I've heard about the concerns about being influenced by how others are voting is a concern. Yeah, but I think I need to hear more. I'm not like I haven't landed on what the best option is here. But I think the default of a secret ballot, I'm in favor of that. It's just a question of whether we should be open, at least open to another option. So that's not very helpful. These are just my musings, but like I would really appreciate like maybe hearing a bit more discussion on this.
Can I ask staff to read if default was, have we gotten so far as to be able to tell us what the bylaw would say if the default was secret ballot and but a trustee could move a recorded vote? Like, is there language? I think that might help clarify what it means. I think there's absolute consensus on the default election process to be included would be a secret ballot. But I think it would be helpful to say what the next piece might say, whether or not to know whether to include it or not.
Through the chair, based on the discussion, and again, I haven't been here that many times to have observed and recorded vote or open ballot. I could imagine the wording of the bylaw could be the default is secret ballot. Trustees may by motion request a open ballot vote. And then you have to identify through what means. So it could be an electronic if we're able to do so, or the 1-by-1 scenario that Trustee McLean talked about, or what you talked about was those in favor of this person, you stand up, and those in favor of the other person, you stand up. So,
sorry, I'm using chair's prerogative. Why would we make it that complicated? Why wouldn't we just say recorded vote? Because that's how we do things around here. If it's a recorded vote, you use the electronic method. Why are we giving other choices?
this is again up to the trustees on how you want to conquer an open vote.
Trustee McLean.
Yeah, I think now we're into the semantics thing of this. I think if you didn't like what I threw out, and I'm good with that, I think we suggest that we are going to operate by secret ballot, period, hard stop. There's an opportunity for trustees to move a motion that if whatever approve it, that the results will be public. So we're going to do the whole process secretly. And then at the end, when we know the results, they're either going to remain private and we announce the victor, or we're going to put them on the screen and say, somebody won 12-10, and we're going to list the people. Like those are that still ensures that the process that is run by secret ballot and avoids the whole standing up, the sequence public standing up and being
Avoid paper. So you're not thinking of, I want to clarify, you're not talking about a secret ballot by paper. You're still talking about a secret ballot by voting electronically, because I wouldn't support that.
Well, but the paper works. Secret ballot, this doesn't
So a
say.
secret
This
ballot
doesn't
by paper, just to clarify, a secret ballot by paper, your name is not on the ballot. It's that secret. So when staff open it up, They don't know who trustee McLean
Okay.
voted for.
Okay, fine.
So
Right.
what you're thinking of doesn't work.
Okay, so, but here it didn't say electronically, it just said by secret ballot. If that means by paper, that's not great.
Okay, so what
But
would
we're going to
part
do
B
it the
be?
same way either way. And the only thing to decide is whether we want an option at the end of the process. Oh, no, because
It's a
recorded, you'd have
different
to go the other
process,
way.
Mr.
Totally, yeah, you'd have to go,
Yeah, it's
you'd
a
have to
different
do a
process.
very public.
It's either the default is by secret ballot, but an option would exist should a trustee wish a recorded vote. That's simple, I believe is all that's required. Or I leave that up to staff. I don't think there should be all these options of standing, sitting, because that's never been the process here. By, voting by electronic means for a recorded vote.
Through the chair, I would perhaps ask Denise Joseph Dowers if she recalls an open vote and how that worked in the past.
Through the chair, through my over 20 years here, we've never had a recorded vote for electing the chair and vice chair of a committee
Of a committee.
or of the board,
That's not true.
in my
Oh,
experience.
in her experience. But if you go to the minutes of the board early on, right, if you go to the minutes, it will tell you in the minutes who the vote, right, was recorded vote. So,
That would have been standing, as you said previously.
yeah, it would have been, you just stood up if you were in favor, and then you went around the room to count trustee McLean, trustee this, trustee that, whatever.
And just to be difficult, because that's my nature, there's also an opportunity to be less public, but more transparent and say, these were the results, which we don't do now. We just declare the winner. So if you don't want to go as far as saying who the 22 people voted for, you can say that the board voted by a number of, 12 to 10, and trustee Laskin wins. Like it doesn't have to be all or not. There's somewhere in between depending on what told you I was being difficult. I was upfront about that.
That wouldn't be a recorded vote. That would be a secret vote where you then report on the results.
Right. Well, we're talking about possibilities, and I'm suggesting that depending on your palate, that like I ran and lost, and it would have been valuable to me to know how that I would have liked to known how that played out, what the numbers were. But we don't do that, and that's fine. But the information would have been valuable. That information would have been valuable to me. But we're not trying to. I'm just saying that, pointing out that there was a third thing that you could do if we're going to talk about what's possible. That would be conceivable.
Can I just ask, prerogative of the chair, trustee King or trustee Williams, do you have a comment on that?
I have a comment overall on that will
Then
include that piece.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
I appreciate the robustness of the thinking, but I feel like some of the options that are being shared are overcomplicating. I'm absolutely in support of having a default. I think just reducing the number of decisions that has to be made is great, and I'd be very comfortable with that being the secret ballot. It's the only option I've ever seen exercised in my short time here. And agree that there should be the option for a recorded vote based on majority, and that would follow the same electronic process that we use for other voting. I personally don't see a need to delve into the transparency pieces on the vote, but I recognize that we're 4 trustees here and colleagues might feel differently. So I'd be open to looking at that if there was some appetite, but it's not something that I've heard discussed among colleagues. And that's it for me, trustee chair.
Thank you. I'll go to trustee Williams, and then I'll make a comment, and then we'll see if anybody wants to move a motion. Trustee Williams.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. So, the default to secret ballot, because that seems to be what's being used, practically speaking. But the option to have, like, what you see in other elections, the candidates and basically the tabulation of the results, I think that might be an option for a recorded vote, because what I'm hearing, recorded vote, the way we do recorded votes, it's not a secret. It's not a secret ballot. You can see clearly who voted for, who voted for what. So yeah, just throwing that in the mix, like as a default secret ballot, but possibly the option of seeing the tabulation of results. And that could be done, like whether we do it by paper or electronically.
Please go ahead.
Through the chair, I'm trying to identify what I think might be the common thread to help us move forward. My belief is there seems to be support for a default secret ballot, but the option for a recorded vote, and that if possible, that the recorded vote is done electronically. So everyone's putting in their vote at the same time. When the results are shown, you'll be able to see who voted for this person and who voted for that person. And of course, the numbers. That is the nature of an open ballot or recorded vote. The other option.
Sure.
Yes.
Can eScribe do a three-person ballot?
Uh,
If three people are running, can eScribe do that?
Through the chair, this is where I wanted to check with Denise Joseph Dowers if even electronically can we do that, because right now it's a yes or a no when we vote on agenda items, whether the categories could be, person number 1, person number 2, person number 3.
We would have to look at eScribe to see if that could, because right now it would show the names
Yes.
of it as trustees voted. It would not be a secret ballot.
No, that's what I mean. Like so I'm not talking about secret ballot anymore, because I think what I'm hearing is there is support for the option of a recorded vote. So how the option of recorded vote, if that is decided upon by the trustees, how would that look like? What I'm hearing is what we don't want to be able to, maybe as we go around the table, that will influence the decision of the next person. What I'm hearing is there still needs to be an opportunity to have your independent thought on who you want to vote for. But the purpose of an open ballot is to be able to see who voted for what. So the decision, what I'm hearing is the information on who voted for which person would be coming after the vote occurs, not before, to avoid the influence of voting that way. So it would require, if not eScribe, some sort of polling type of technology to be able to have that, but the names of the individuals who voted for who, to me, that is what a recorded vote is all about, if that's the option.
You're moving
Or-
away from a paper ballot then?
For a recorded vote, not the secret ballot. I think we've all determined would be paper ballot, because that's the only way to ensure it stayed secret, where only 2 people get to count it, then they're destroyed, period. The issue is if somebody asks for a recorded vote in this context, since we've had eScribe, that has never happened before with multiple questions on the ballot. So it's you either say yes or no right now to anything we use eScribe for. We've never used eScribe for yes, no, maybe, right? 3 options. So the question is, can eScribe be used? Say there's 4 people running or 5 people running, to put 5 options in and you select one. My gut is no. it can't.
But given that I'm the budget chair and don't really want to be buying new technology, you also could just sign the ballot. Each person could get a ballot with their name on it secretly. We would vote secretly. And then the two people who would then compile a list and it could be public.
Mm, mhm.
Right? You don't have to buy
Yes.
the new technology to be able to figure out who voted for who. You just have to sign your ballot. Everyone would be given a ballot with your ward number on it. We would be able to, it would take 5 minutes, but you would compile a list.
Correct.
Well, with the organizational board now, in preparing for a recorded vote, we do have paper ballots with trustees' names prepared, so that if they ever
So it's
choose to
done.
vote that way,
Right.
we are prepared.
Right. So we don't need new toys. We just,
No, so the issue is default, secret ballot, but the option for recorded vote, period. Mr. Plotnikoff.
Madam Chair, and if this option is to be used, the board would require just simple majority vote, right?
Correct.
Through the chair, no, again, we're talking about chair and vice chair roles. It's not
Just chair,
majority,
vice
it's
chair.
plurality, right? So whichever candidate has the highest number of votes is the chair or the
But if
vice
the-
chair.
That's
if we're,
majority.
if we're deciding about the process and we're 11-11, what does that mean?
It loses.
It loses. Okay, the default, that's why you have a default. The default,
Yeah,
you revert back to the default. So you would need more than, you would need 12 to opt for the recorded vote.
Sorry, I think we're talking about two different things. If there is a desire to opt for, if someone wants to put a motion for for a recorded vote, I recommend a majority vote. So 50% plus one.
correct.
So that's one thing. Sorry, I thought what I heard was the majority vote in terms of a candidate. And obviously I misunderstood. So thank you.
Yeah, the candidate gets the majority of the votes wins, as opposed to a majority vote, like they don't
Mhm.
12 votes.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Plurality. Yeah.
Okay, so clear as mud. Does somebody, any more comments on that? Trustee Williams?
Yeah, just like one more question slash comment. Oh, so the recorded vote is clear. The name of the person and how they voted. I'm just like trying to see like what's the purpose, real purpose of that? What's the utility of that? For the candidates, like we see in other elections that are run, you see the name of the candidate and how many votes they receive. That might be useful to the candidate in, you know, understanding their level of support, how they like to move forward, etc. So is that possibility the open for discussion? It's a secret ballot, but you're have the option of knowing the results, I guess, the tabulation of votes. Candidate 1 got X number of votes. Candidate 2 got X number of votes. That might be useful.
That's not a secret ballot.
But
That's not a definition of a secret ballot.
You would argue that our federal elections are secret ballots and we post the results of how many votes they get.
Through the chair, at this point in time, our current practice is to not identify the number of votes that each candidate for a position receives. I would offer some advice that maybe that's not a good road to go down for internal relationships and also the confidence of the public. That, let's say, the vote was close or the vote was very far. So something for you to think about. I think to try to simplify this, what we can do is based on the information and discussion that we had, we'll put some wording in for a potential bylaw and then come back
Perfect. Perfect.
with something
Kicked it
in
around.
writing for you to
Mr.
talk
Plotnikoff.
about.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I guess I would suggest we probably should include definitions of both the default and the option.
Perfect.
Thank
Thank you. Wonderful.
But just to be clear, through you, Madam Chair, we're still going to, the processes themselves will still require that if we had multiple candidates,
It would be paper.
right, but we're still going to go to the point where we're going to, if the top vote getter doesn't get 12 or more, we're going to eliminate the bottom and move, like,
No, that's not how we do chair and vice chair.
Through the chair, that would be
if we have a
different
three-way
voting
race,
process.
well, if we have a three-way race and the leader doesn't get to 12,
Oh, doesn't get to 12.
right, or more, doesn't get the majority, then do we not eliminate the bottom one and go again? Is that not what we do?
Yes.
Through the
that-
chair, I think that's called a runoff. Sorry,
That's currently.
But we're still going to do that is my question. We're still going to make sure that ultimately, before someone is named the chair or the vice chair, the majority of the board is going to have supported them.
Through the chair, Denise Joseph Dowers, is that the current
Yes,
process, a runoff ballot?
The current practice is that the member who with the least number of votes is dropped off the ballot and another vote is conducted with the remaining candidates.
So if 5 people run for chair, you have, unless that first vote has 12, you keep going until somebody
Right.
has
And
12.
if there's a tie for the bottom position, they draw lots, is that?
Right, the vote is conducted once more, and if the tie remains, then there is a drawing of lots.
Okay, no,
Yep.
if we're going to do this, we should,
I believe
Those
actually,
clauses wouldn't change.
right, that's all I was just trying to, if we're going to wrap this up with a bow and say we're moving on, that we should be
Thank
clear
you.
that all of that is still in place and that's the will of the committee and ultimately the will of the board.
Thank you very much. Number 2, you were going to find out the legal definition of number 2 before we have that discussion?
through the chair, yes.
Number 3, celebrations. Does anybody here remember the day when students used to come to the board meeting to begin board meetings?
Well, we've seen them dance and sing and do different things.
They always used to sing O Canada. There used to be a
Oh, okay.
live performance of O Canada at every board meeting by students. But I think I aged myself. Any conversation on criteria should be established for celebrations, the timing, the number? Can I pass the chair since nobody else has put their hand up? I think there should be celebrations still. I believe that there should be something to celebrate public. And I would assume this would include heritage months as well, celebrations of heritage months or whatever. But I do think it should be limited to 15 minutes. That's so if there's 4 things to be celebrated, they each get, 4 minutes each or 3.5 minutes each. If there's 2 things to be celebrated, they could have up to 7. That's my sense. I believe in celebrations, but I don't think sometimes they take 45 minutes and I think that's too much. So that's my comment and I will take the chair back and go to Trustee McLean.
Thank you, and through you. I don't mind the idea that each Heritage Month would have a specific timeline, 10 minutes, 12 minutes, whatever. I do get I'm a little apprehensive to suggest that the Heritage Months who happen to occur when we have 3 of them get less time than the Heritage Month celebrations when we have 2 or we have 1. Then it starts to get into what month are we in, and we don't get the same respect that Heritage Month gets. I think that's a slippery slope. I think a better idea might be to just create a fixed presentation timeline that would apply to all, regardless of how many you are having at any particular board meeting.
Would you like to propose what timeline that should be? Trustee McLean? Just speak to something concrete?
10 sounds good.
10
too.
minutes
but-
per celebration?
10-month per celebrate, not per person. So it's 10-month per group. It's not a concept that you can double the time by spreading the wealth and all of that.
So 10 minutes in total.
10 minutes. Yeah,
In
you're going to
total
show a movie for
each
5
of the
minutes.
celebration.
Then you get 5 minutes to talk about it. Like your committee, your heritage committee gets 10 minutes, use it as you please, that kind of thing.
Thank you. Trustee Williams, Trustee King. So right now on the floor for discussion is yes, there should be criteria. And Trustee McLean's just thrown out the possibility of 10 minutes per celebration. Trustee King.
Thank you, through you, Chair. So absolutely agree with maintaining celebrations. My original thought was a time frame on how much time celebrations are within the agenda. So whether it's a 15-minute block or a 20-minute block, I felt that defining that up front would be helpful to also consistency, but also meeting management. And then it would be up to the chairs and folks who are planning to figure out how many celebrations and then what that means. And my one caveat is if there was only one celebration, I certainly wouldn't expect that suddenly that one would take up 20 minutes, where that's not the usual practice. I'm still open to thought, but that was my original thinking on that one. And then just once we wrap this up, I did have a final comment on number 1 that was missed that I'd like to go back to, but we'll keep the flow going right now.
Thank you very much. So you're proposing tentatively a maximum of 20 minutes, but if it was a singular celebration, it wouldn't be longer than 10 minutes
Or whatever that number is, yes.
or whatever that number is.
Yes.
Thank you. And your maximum time is 20 minutes?
Yes.
Thank you. Trustee Williams, any thoughts?
So just looking at our existing Heritage Months, I also appreciate this celebration of Heritage Months and believe those celebrations are very important. I'm in favor of like allotting a fair amount of time for each. So, you know, I think 10 minutes is reasonable. It could give space like to a maximum of 10 minutes, let's say, like it could take them less time to present, but 10 minutes I think would give an opportunity if some kind of video clip was to be shared and then comments made, and that time shared between, you know, whoever is speaking. It could be multiple speakers, but 10 minutes each. So looking at the existing, there's like a possibility of 30 minutes maximum in October with the 3 Heritage Months, but most of them are one or two celebrations. So I'm leaning towards 10 minutes each as a maximum.
Thank you very much. Any other comments on the 10 minutes each? I think we have consensus on that for you to write up and bring back to us. And now I'll go back to Trustee King for her previous comment, please.
Thank you, through the chair. I just wanted to wade in on the possibility the ability of eScribe to manage the voting process if there were more than 2 candidates for chair or for vice chair. And I wondered if it simply couldn't be in sequence. So the first candidate would come up and it's a yes, no. Second candidate comes up, it's a yes, no. Third, yes, no. And the results are not revealed until all of those are tabulated at the end. So I leave that with the governance team as something else to consider.
In a recorded vote.
In a recorded vote.
Thank you. I think the governance team heard.
Thank you.
Number 4, which was the last piece we were going to talk about today, and I don't know if anybody's looked outside,
Yeah,
but it's
there's no way.
not very
I'm going to
pleasant.
do 15 minutes on this and we've got 10.
Wonderful.
Every year.
I'm going to Trustee McLean first.
Okay, well, I was really looking for a way to stall, but I can run the clock out if that's really what you're looking for. Through you, Madam Chair. I think at committee, we should have 3 rounds. I believe 5, 3, and 3. And I believe at board, we should have 2 rounds, 5 and 2. I think at board, there have been times that for the people who go early, the conversation pivots and there's no mechanism to get back in. A limited ability to do that, I think, might get us to better decisions. And if we do some sort of, I don't expect to be able to sell this and that people are going to buy this, but if we came up with a model, regardless of the numbers and specific rounds, I think it would alleviate the need to call the question, and that we would pull that, because then that would really seem to be a harmful thing if we were, if a person could only go for 11 minutes was the max in my scenario that you could go. I think we owe it to if we create that mechanism, we should let them go. And we should have the 3 rounds. But I think it would work something like what our actual practice currently is. Before we go to round 2, we make, this is round 1. Before we go to round 2, does everybody want to speak? When you say you don't, and we go to round 2, if you should have not spoken initially, and now we're in round 2, all round 2 conversations are 3 minutes. All round 3 conversations are 3 minutes. So you don't necessarily get 5 minutes, your first kick at the can. Just the first round would be everyone gets 5 minutes. And then the second, that's what I think that would control, that would limit one trustee from monopolizing the meeting and going on and on. I think it would create more flow. I think it resembles kind of what our operation is around making sure all trustees have an opportunity to speak before we go to the second round and let people go to the well again. And I don't think that's any written in I think that's just our formal, how we do things, how the chairs of the committees have operated to try to be fair to the trustees. But something along those lines is what I think would be the optimal way to go.
Thank you. Trustee King or Trustee Williams? So Trustee McLean's proposing in a board 2 times 5 and 2, and in committee 3 rounds, 5, 3, and 3. Okay, I'll pass the chair since I didn't see anybody's hand yet.
I can go ahead.
Oh, Trustee King, please go ahead.
So I'm also in favor of committee having the limits, and I was thinking 5, 5, and 5. I think that if everybody took advantage of that, it would limit each item to just over an hour, which again just provides some predictability and meeting management. I'm interested in what Trustee McLean has suggested with the 3-minute rounds. I'm just wondering about whether that becomes just more of a burden on the chair to be able to manage keeping track of who spoke in what round and that. So I'm thinking still the 3 by 5 there. And I hadn't even considered a second round in board. I think that's an interesting proposition, and I'm going to continue to think about that one. I might have some more comment.
Thank you very much. Can I pass the chair?
Please proceed.
Thank you very much. I don't support a second round at board. I think I just don't. And in terms of multiple rounds at committee, if there's a stop on them, I think 3 is reasonable, and I would stick to 5 minutes. That's my thoughts. And I'll take the chair back. Trustee Williams, any thoughts on this item?
I do like the idea of the 3 rounds, 3 rounds at committee. Yeah, just considering the timing, like the suggestion of 5, 5, and 5, I think is still reasonable. For board, I'm not opposed to having a second round at board. The 5 and 2, to give that opportunity, you know, to add to the discussion, maybe finish a thought, finish some line of reasoning. Yeah, so it's still considering the options, but open to, you know, open to those capping it at those 3 rounds for sure.
Trustee McLean.
And just to clarify, the concept of the second round being 2 minutes, that the movers and seconder, like the movers generally get a second window at board. They get an opportunity to close. If we did this, their close, they would just be last. They wouldn't get 3 opportunities. They would just go last if they wanted to, and be able to speak to it. But they were, that second round would be their opportunity to close, kind of thing. If you're the mover or seconder, you get to open the presentation, the discussion, and then you get to close the discussion, which is kind of what we do now.
Okay.
Can I ask Trustee Laskin, you're pretty, like, you were pretty decisive. And you get to vote any way you want. I'm not trying to sway you. I'm just, you were the downside.
I just think the discussion should happen at committee, and at board, you should be able to make a statement. But I don't think there should be multiple rounds at board. May I pass the chair again to you?
Trustee Laskin, please proceed.
Thank you. I've often been bothered at committee that committee members aren't prioritized in speaking. And I'm wondering what my colleagues think about that. Because that you go on a committee on purpose to be on the committee, and anybody can come to the committees. But I'm just wondering if committee members should be prioritized in terms of comments. I'm just throwing it out there to see if anybody has an opinion on that.
I mean, I'm not supposed to, Trustee King, can I pass the chair to you?
Actually, I have my hand up on this one.
Okay, way to go. You go first.
All right. I don't have an issue on that one. I think there's been some really valuable conversations at committee with members and non-members. I haven't seen an instance where I feel like as a committee member, we haven't been able to speak or haven't been prioritized. So I don't have an issue that way. I do have a question for Trustee McLean about the suggestion on the second round at board. Were you suggesting that that would only be on motions and not on staff items, or were you just using that as a comparison about the way that it works when we're speaking to motions as a way to exemplify how it could work on a report as well?
I mean, to be honest, when I thought about it as in terms of discussions. I'm not sure how a mechanism, depending on what the subject matter was, how that would, I think that sounds awkward to me. But it seemed more relevant when motions were on the floor as opposed to approving but the reports don't get approved. Like if we follow through where we're likely to go, we're not going to move to approve reports for receipt anymore. We're just going to receive them. So that would take those kind of votes out. but I didn't, when I envisioned it, I just, an additional opportunity didn't seem like a bad idea.
Trustee
And to
King?
this, what Trustee Laskin had shared, sorry, were you done, Trustee King?
I was done, yes.
Okay, sorry, I didn't, and I'm not sure who's got the floor or
Go for it.
interested in how that works out. I'm concerned. I think being on the committee gives you the ability to move motions and have seconds, and you ultimately get to vote. I'm concerned that that people would become reluctant, or if we told them we didn't want to hear from them until I'm concerned that that would potentially at least create a hierarchy and discourage involvement. And I have never, in the 6+ years I've been here and been on obviously only one of the 3 committees, I have never found it personally to be a challenge to wait my turn in terms of speaking. So I think this seeks to solve a problem I guess I don't think exists. So I'm kind of happy with where we are.
If I can put the chair back to just continue that conversation. What bothers me is that committee members do nothing. What bothers me is you have a committee made up of 5 or 6 trustees and 1 or 2 committee members ever speak. A number of committee members don't participate at all. And I'm thinking it's just a way to maybe impress upon the fact that people should be reading their agendas and come to the committee. And if you're a committee member, you actually should be participating in your committee. I just feel like it's a responsibility of being a trustee. And I think that it's just for me, it's a bit of a subtle way to make that point. But it's here nor there. I mean, we've never had that, so I'm not married to it. I just threw it out there because what has bothered me consistently is members of the committee don't participate in their committee. And I believe it's an obligation as a trustee. You're on a committee for a purpose. That's the work of the board. And I was just trying to figure out a way, instead of putting in a bylaws, you must read your agendas. There'll be a test. Anyway, it bothers me. It just bothers me that there's not that kind of participation. But that's just a personal opinion, and I'm not married to it. And I'm looking at the time, and it's 2 o'clock. So are there other comments on here? I think staff has heard us. I think we're there for limiting committee times. I don't think we've landed on what. And I think we haven't fully discounted a second round at board yet. But we haven't. We probably look forward to you coming back with some potential language, because I think it is easier to discuss potential language. Before I close the meeting, did anyone have any other comments on items 1, 2, or 3, or 4 that they haven't been able to make yet for staff to do their work? Trustee McLean.
I'll just say that of when we send the survey out, I expect number 4 to get a fair amount of, I think it'd be counterproductive for us to tie this up with a bow before we got the results of the survey. I think that people are going, in their survey responses, are going to weigh in particularly on this. So I think the timing of our next discussion about this should come after the survey results or no.
Thank you very much, and I agree with you. It will be, if there are responses, that will be a popular one. I do want to ask the committee, what is a reasonable length of time for the survey to close? 1 week, 10 days? Or
1
more?
week?
I mean, assuming you've got it, assuming you have it ready,
It's ready. Yep.
then a week or two, whatever, in essence, the finish line is the next time we meet. right? So you need enough time to send it out, get it back,
Yep.
figure out what it says, what it means, tabulate so that when you come back, that we can use it in a meaningful manner to help us with the discussion. So
Yep.
that's
I appreciate that because it will take a little bit of time to do some analysis because it is all long form answers. So it will be quite time consuming.
And committee members, thank you again for your participation today and your encouragement for our colleagues to fill out the survey once it comes out. Thank you, staff, and motion to adjourn. Trustee McLean, thank you. Seconded by